We're going to do another example, don't worry, because I know that this is difficult. Here we have the cosine law, written in a slightly different way. That's to determine, excuse me, an unknown angle. So I'm not sure if you remember, but we can use the sine law to figure out an unknown side or an unknown angle. We can also use the cosine law to figure out an unknown side or an unknown angle, depending on how the triangle is set up. So if the triangle is set up as such, let's see. Let's do the measurement of the angle. Okay, so we have three sides, 1, 2, 3, and we have no angles. So this is a case where you could not use sine law. It's impossible. It wouldn't work. So you have to use cosine law. You'll learn that there's certain situations where you have to use cosine law, and certain situations where you have to use sine law, and the other option is not available. For example, in this example here, you could not use sine law as well, because the rule for using sine law only is that you have to have a pair of a side length and an angle. And in this case, we don't have this angle, but we have the side length. In this case, we don't have this angle, but we have the side length. And in this pair, we don't have the side length, but we have the angle. So you could not use sine law because it was in a situation. And if you tried using it, you'd figure that out, that each fraction of the sine law equation would have a missing piece. And it's impossible to use sine law if you don't have a complete fraction, with numbers given. So yeah. All right. So once again, this is another example where you have to use cosine law, where no angles are given. So we have angle A. So we have we're looking for angle A, right? So that means our equation has to start with A. A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared, which is the other two letters, minus 2BC cos angle A. All right, so remember, whatever angle is given or whatever angle we're solving for, that's the letter that we use in the beginning to solve for using our cosine law. Because that letter is the same letter that's going to go here. They're all, the beginning and the end are always the same letter, except for like lowercase and uppercase, obviously. But yeah. Okay, so A squared is 19 squared, because we know that this is A, because it's the opposite of capital A. We know this is C, and we know this is B. Very important to not mix them. A lot of students, I've seen them, they just use the cosine law, just plug in random numbers into it and to solve it. And yes, they did the math right, did it right, except they didn't solve for the right angle. And, you don't get full marks for that. So just be very careful. So 19 squared equals 22 squared plus 14 squared minus 2 times 22 times 14 cos, and we don't know what capital A is, but we know it's theta. It's our unknown angle. Now you're just plugging in these numbers. What is 19 squared? 361. Hmm. 22 squared, 44. $196. And 2 times 22 times 14, 2 times 22 times 14 is 616. So we're slowly gonna bring over everything because we want our unknown variable to be isolated. So we're going to bring the 484 and the 196 over. Now, you can actually add these up. You don't need to do it in 2 steps, just add them together. It doesn't really matter. What's 484 plus 196? 680. Now I'm going to bring the 680 over. Remember, when you're bringing something over the equal sign from the right side to the left side, or left side from the right side, you have to change its operation, meaning if it's addition or subtraction, it flips to the opposite. And if it's multiplication or division, it flips to the opposite of that. So the opposite of multiplication is division. Opposite of division is multiplication. So just be careful with that. So right now 680 is a positive number. That means it's kind of like addition. So when it goes over, it becomes 361 minus 680. So 361 minus 680 is, and here we have a negative number. Don't be afraid of negative numbers. They're just numbers. Oh yeah, that's a cool animal. What's that called? That's a good question. I think it's a badger.
Badger.
Yeah, badger. All right, so now we have this situation. You want the parrot? No parrot today, okay, baby?
Parrot today?
Yep. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 616.
Look at me.
Yes, looking at you. Because we want to cancel out this number. Remember, we've been in this situation many times, where you have a number times cos of your unknown angle. You just have to divide both sides by that number. And remember, this number is negative, so don't be afraid. It just means you're dividing by a negative number. That's it. So divide both sides by negative 616. So it's 319 divided by 616. In this case, the negatives will just cancel out. Or you can just plug it in your calculator and you should get the same answer. It doesn't really matter. Alright, so 319 divided by 616 is 0.5178. 17818.
It's looking at me. It's cooler.
Yeah.
It's walking up there.
Yes. Okay, so then we take the cos. Remember, the final step is to always take the trig function last over to the other side, whether it's sine, cos, or tan. So now in this case, it's cos.
I'm tired.
Go play with. Okay, go on bed. Go. It's okay. Oh, sorry. All right, go play with toys. So now we're going to take cos. As we cos minus 1 of 0.518. And then you just do that in your calculator. So what is that? 0.518 shift cos. And you should get 58.8 degrees. I'm just going to round up to 59 degrees. So my unknown angle is 59 degrees. That's the answer. So a lot of steps. I hope, remember the recording comes out. Just rewatch the recording if you get confused. And hopefully you can pause it and figure it out. So that is now 2 examples of cosine law. 1 example of finding the side, 1 example of finding an angle, and 2 examples of sine law. We are now going to do what's called selecting the right strategies to try to figure out which situation should we use, which law. Should we use the sine law or cosine law? To use the sine law, you need to know either 2 angles and a side, or 2 sides and a non-included angle. What does that mean? So in this example here, you need to know either 2 angles and any side, so it doesn't matter. So for the sine law to work, if you're given 2 angles and any side, you can use the sine law. Or Oh yeah, so this is the same situation where you have two angles on any side. It doesn't matter, both work. Or if you have two sides, SSA, two sides and an angle. Not included angle means the angle that's not between the two sides. So it has to be any other angle except for the angle in between the two sides that are given. So what do I mean by that? This is for sine law. So if I have this angle and this angle, the trick to know is that whenever I'm given two angles, automatically your brain should say, no, I've been given three angles. Because using the property that we learned in the very beginning, in the first slide, where all the interior angles have to add up to 180, we know if I know these two angles, I definitely can find out the third angle. That is why the sine law can be used, because technically we don't have two angles, we actually have all three angles and the side length. And then we can use the sine law to figure out, either we want this side or we want, this side. Doesn't really matter. Same thing with this. If I have two angles, I know the third angle, and we can use that to figure out this side or this side. It doesn't really matter. Now, in this third example, we've been given two sides and any angle that's not this angle, that's between the two sides. If we were given this angle, we could not use the sine law, because the sine law specifically works with these opposite pairs. You need to have one pair of angle and side length for the sine law to work. Now, the cosine law is kind of the opposite, where the situations where the sine law doesn't work, you can use the cosine law. So cosine law works where if you're given two sides, but also the angle that's in between. If it was any other angle, you could not use the cosine law. But in this situation, you can use the cosine law. Or the only other time is when you're given all three sides of a triangle, you can use the cosine law to find any angle within that triangle. So that's it. All right, practice. We have a few minutes to do practice. Let's do this. Question for you. Which strategy? We're not asking you to solve it. I'm not asking you to solve for the angle. I just want you to know which strategy to use. Are you going to use the sine law? Are you going to use the cosine law? Or are you going to use a primary trig ratio, SOHCAHTOA, to figure out angle A? So go ahead and do that right now. I'll see if I can get that poll going. So is it going to be A, B, or C? So the poll has been launched. Okay, so here are your results. A lot of you said B, which is the cosine law. Let's see what the answer is. In this case, we are given three sides and no angles, so it has to be the cosine law. Pretty straightforward. All right, what about this one? I'm not going to do the poll for this one. Or fine, I will. Give me a second. So here's your... So half of you said A, half of you said C. Very interesting. Because, technically speaking, you're both right. You could technically use the sine law to figure this one out, because you have the opposite pairs here. But remember, this is a right angle triangle. You can also use the primary trig ratios. Technically, you can use both. Now, the answer, in case you're wondering, math teachers are looking for, C is the correct answer. Because whenever you have a right angle triangle, the answer is always primary trig ratios. But in actual math, you can use both formulas to eventually solve for it. But just so you know, on a quiz or a test or whatever, the correct answer is primary trig ratios.